In this video, we're going to look at some of the hype surrounding blockchain versus its real value. And as we develop our solution throughout the course, it's important we keep in mind why we're using blockchain, not why we think we're using blockchain. The first piece of hype you probably heard with the rise of blockchain popularity in mainstream culture is that blockchain is new. The truth is, blockchain is actually quite old, and so are shared transaction ledgers, and so is decentralization. In fact, blockchain has been around for thousands of years through a device called a tally stick. Now, a tally stick is an ancient tool, and it could be used individually or with a peer, with a friend, with a creditor, with a debtor. Individually, it was really similar to a modern piece of paper. It was a piece of animal bone or wood that you could etch little notches into for later information retrieval. So when it was used with a peer, whoever that may be, it was really similar to how we define blockchain. The Hyperledger Fabric documentation defines blockchain as an immutable transaction ledger maintained with a distributed network of peer nodes. And these nodes each maintain a copy of the ledger by applying transactions that have been validated by a consensus protocol, grouped into blocks that include a hash that bind each block to the preceding block. Sounds really complicated. It's not. We'll cover throughout this course. Now, we'll get into the specifics of the definition, but for now, keep in the back of your mind for a second all of that complex terminology. So back to tally sticks. When a tally stick was used with a peer, whoever that may be, the notches represented some kind of transaction. Now we're starting to relate it back to blockchain. For example, debts. The tally stick was split in half after those notches had been added, and each person would get their side. And at a later date, they'd be able to put the halves together and confirm that they hadn't been modified or replaced. So the uniqueness of that animal bone or wood used for the tally stick is really the equivalent to a modern day encryption like we just saw in the Hyperledger Fabric definition. And that's where each transaction has a unique fingerprint from an encryption standpoint. From a tally stick standpoint, there was a unique fingerprint because each piece of wood or bone was unique. So just like the Hyperledger Fabric documentation definition of a blockchain, tally sticks were really an immutable transaction ledger maintained with a distributed network of peer nodes. Not quite new at all. The second common misconception is that blockchain will change the world. As we saw with tally sticks, blockchain actually already has changed the world. The difference now is digitalization. So instead of an animal bone and wood, it's computers. And that means instead of manually breaking a stick in half, a computer records a calculation in really the blink of an eye. And actually much faster than that because the amount of transactions has grown exponentially through digitalization, as has the size of the potential network. Obviously, if you're using tally sticks, that's going to be a little smaller than a globally distributed internet that we have nowadays. So instead of two peers and a stick, the limitations now is really our modern computational power. Of course, too much of a good thing is not necessarily still a good thing. Using a tally stick to replace ancient tools would make just as much sense as using blockchain to replace modern tools. It makes sense for some business cases, but not all. The thing we should truly be excited about with blockchain is how blockchain will change the worlds where business cases beg for enterprise blockchain solutions. And we'll cover that in this course, where it makes sense and where it doesn't. The last common misconception is that everyone is using blockchain but me. Although it feels like a blockchain is everywhere from what we're seeing in the media or we're seeing online, it's still an emerging technology, and it's a bit like the early days of the internet where there were competing protocols and browsers and really opinions on the future. The truth is that a lot of organizations think they're using blockchain when really they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. If it ain't broke, then don't fix it. So unless there's a good business case for using blockchain, then existing solutions are still okay. Blockchain solves some problems, but it doesn't solve all problems. The problems it does solve, though, it solves them extremely well. And the value is knowing when. So as we progress through this course, that fear of missing out, the goal is that it's replaced by a really quiet confidence in knowing when you can deliver real value with blockchain and how to do it. So now that we've covered the main misconceptions about blockchain, let's learn how to think about blockchain in an enterprise setting.